Welcome to the Hammy Show. We have a very special guest with us today, the one, the only Jeff Dantzler, a walking encyclopedia of Georgia sports, sometimes referred to as the Guru by Bulldog Illustrated and Vance Levy. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with me today. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, anything for you, anytime, my friend. Very exciting times for us. So, what's on your mind? What are we talking about today?
Well, let's kick it off, and we'll start it off a little bit about you. So, what was the beginning of the love of Georgia sports that you have that started way back in your childhood?
Well, I've just always loved the Bulldogs, and I guess it just kind of hit in that sweet spot. I was 8 in 1980 when Georgia won the national championship, so it was an instant just gravitate towards it, and 8, 9, 10, and 11 for the glory days of the early 80s. So you talk about being hooked hard. You know that hook was all the way so far down. It was out of my big toe. I've always showed one of my first memories ever was a 78 Tech game when we had the great 29-28 comeback there. So just love Georgia ever since. And it's one of those things that I think that's common amongst so many people, especially with Southern football. Your team, what you love when you're young, that's always going to hold a very special place in your heart.
Yes, sir. Exactly. It's the same for me. It's the same for many people. Like you said, that love of Georgia is so special. But I want to talk about, can you pick out a favorite player? I see the number 34 right behind you and somebody that probably hooked you on loving Georgia football. But is there anybody else other than the great Herschel Walker who stands out as a favorite player?
Herschel's number one. Certainly, all those guys from the early '80s and from when I was growing up stand out. You know, Terry Hogue, Scott Werner, Chris Welton, Frank Ross. I'm going to leave somebody out: Tim Morrison, Hugh Nall, Knox Culpepper, Wayne Radloff, Kevin Butler, Rex Robinson, David Dukes from the mid '80s, of course, and all those guys from the '80s. Guy McIntyre, Freddie Gilbert, Jimmy Payne, my favorite nickname ever, Meat Cleaver Weaver, all those guys from the '80s. So you know how it is when you're young. That'll always be like for me. My favorite Georgia team ever is the '82 team. I was 10 years old, and we went 11-0, and unfortunately lost the Sugar Bowl. I was there in New Orleans, but that team, that was the first year where I could remember I didn't miss a play. We got to go to 3 games. And that was BYU, Memphis State, and the Sugar Bowl, and the Florida game and the Mississippi State game were on TV, and Clemson to open the season. So those 6, and then every other of the other 6 games, I listened to every play by Munson. So that was, that was a time where I really do literally remember not missing a play, and those were just golden days. Like Tom Watson was my favorite golfer back then. He's still my favorite golfer today. Same for John McEnroe was my favorite tennis player back then. So I just think for anybody, what you love at a very young age when it comes to sports, that's going to stick with you the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So one person that wasn't on the gridiron, but a special person in Georgia history is Dan Magill, and somebody that you have told me many a times that stood out to you as the greatest Bulldog that ever lived, and is commonly referred to that by many Georgia people. So what was the role that Dan Magill had in your life and the life of the University of Georgia?
No doubt the greatest Bulldog ever. When I think about my ultimate heroes, people like Coach Magill, Larry Munson, those 2, and then you talk about Irk Russell and Coach Dooley, just legends. And I was so fortunate to have a great relationship with them all. And I love Coach Magill like so many people did. I don't know what the official number is now, but the great Claude Felton, another of the greatest Bulldogs ever, he figured out, this was about 20-something years ago, that there were something like 50 full-time people now doing the job that Coach Magill did by himself back in the day. And he was the greatest sports information director. He founded and ran the Bulldog Clubs, which is a revolutionary concept. He was a master promoter. And, he was the winningest tennis coach of all time until his successor, the great Manuel Diaz, passed him for all-time victories. But he just did so many things, and there was that pure love for Georgia, which resonated to everybody. And I'll always say for Coach Magill, the best way to just look at him is look at who his successors were, and Manuel Diaz and Claude Felton, the absolute best. And it was just very special for me with my love for him and my love for Georgia that that he was able to take me under his wing and tell a lot of stories, some of which we could air, and some of which would probably be better left edited just a little bit. But he was absolutely the best.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. So I know tennis is a special sport in your life. You called baseball for so many years, the Lady Dogs. Can you pick out a favorite sport other than football that you've been a part of in Georgia history?
Yeah, I love them all, really, and of course, so many close connections to tennis and definitely with baseball through the years, and with basketball, especially when Coach Landers was with the Lady Dogs team. He again was kind of like a big brother to me, but I just love them all. I mean, our golf program, our swimming programs, and so much of that has to do with the legendary coaches we've had. Of course, Coach Wallace just retired, and Coach Bowerly just retired, but Coach Diaz and Coach Hack are still going strong, and I would love it if each of those guys could get one more championship before they join their friends in retirement. And I'm very kind of humbled. I'm actually on a text thread. I'm on a lot of text threads, which I've got. Good gosh, I think I've got 1,200 unread text messages right now, most of them from threads. But I'm on a thread with Manny, Jack, Jeff, Coach Hack, and Andy Landers. So that's a pretty cool. We'll pop something out about every week or so. So that's a good one to be on.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome one. I'm sure the stories that are mentioned on that have been quite amusing at times.
G-rated.
The G-rated ones, of course. So can you pick out a moment that just stands out as just a great Georgia sports moment? Doesn't have to be football, but just a moment that is in your brain forever.
Well, two of them for me are Jeff Keppinger back in 2001 in his performance against Coastal Carolina and later against Florida State. But we were behind, and he hit the go-ahead home run. We were actually the visiting team in the winner-take-all championship game, and he went 5 for 5 with 3 homers and hit a go-ahead home run. That was, I always like to say, that's baseball's Baloo to Scott. And then in 2008, Gordon Beckham, and for my money, as far as position players go, and we've had a lot of great ones at Georgia. Gordo and Kep are at the top of the list, and Gordon in his last at bat hit a home run, and that was against NC State that sent us to the World Series for the 4th time in 8 years. Those two are very special. Winning at Tech in 2004. Jonathan Wyatt hit his first career home run to put us up 2, and Will Startup got the save. JW had the catch to end it. And we were the first game out of the gate that day in the Super Regional. We had won on Friday, and we won on Saturday. That game started at noon, and Coach Perno was a very close friend. And I just remember being down on the field. I was done with post game and everything. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, thinking like, oh my God, we're going to Omaha. We're the first team in. And then the question was, do we celebrate in Athens or do we stay and celebrate in Atlanta?
That's too good. So I was going to bring up the Jeff Keppinger call because, I mean, the play alone was spectacular, but your call made it just that much better. The fences on Kudzu Hill are coming down. I mean, I've listened to that call on YouTube countless times with many buddies, and it is a legendary call. So I'm glad that stands out as an awesome moment, because it stands out as an awesome moment in Jeff Dantzler history as well.
Well, I appreciate it. That was just one of those moments. It was serendipitous. And after the game, I can remember saying, if Coach Polk's got a sign that says hit a home run, he just flashed it. He hit the home run on the 2-1 pitch. I didn't realize I had said it before the pitch that he homered on. I knew I'd done it at some point in that at bat, but the fact that I said it and it happened to be the pitch that he homered on really helped. But that was definitely one of those magic moments, and I was honored to be a part of it. And that was when this next season starts in 2024. The fact that will then be 23 seasons ago. I was back in my 20s then, living the dream. So it's a long time ago.
Oh yeah. You were like the Babe Ruth of that play. You called his shot.
yeah, it's a long time ago.
That's awesome. All right, so I want to talk about the seasons of the teams that you call. So baseball with the new head coach, what's it looking like on the diamond for the Dogs?
I think we'll have a good season. I think Coach Johnson inherited a lot of talent. Coach Strickland and his staff did an excellent job, and There are a lot of good players, of course, headlined by Charlie Condon, who might be the best player in the country. And he's brought in some very good transfers, and there's a good freshman class coming in as well. And that's one of the things now. It used to be, and I just always remember growing up, and I'd get my Lindy's and my Athlons, and you would look at the schedule and you would look at every team's returning starters and then impact newcomers. So it was your veterans and your true freshmen. Well, now with the transfers, there's that third mix to the recipe there, and it's not always guaranteed. But by no means can you find a way just to guarantee to have the locker room chemistry and the on field or on court chemistry. But it's a very important part of the game now, whether you like it, loathe it, love it, hate it, or somewhere in between. But it is indeed a very important part of the game. I still think, and 99% of coaches will tell you, unfortunately here at Georgia, we're one of the schools where this is the case. You build with recruiting and development, and you plug holes with the transfer portal. It's very similar to professional sports. You build through the draft, and then you plug those holes with free agency.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So moving on to the Lady Dawgs. I know they've gotten off to a little bit of a hot start. They're looking good. But what are your opinions on the Lady Dawgs, their future moving forward with Coach Abraham Henson?
Yeah, I think with Coach, just call her Coach Abe. That's what she tells everybody.
Yeah, okay.
It's a mouthful. I think we've got a shot to make the tournament again this year. And if that happens, who knows what can happen. It's all about getting in. And I think that's a big thing for us and men's and women's basketball and baseball. Can we consistently be in the NCAA tournament? Then if you put yourself in position enough, you're inevitably, you would think, have a couple of special seasons.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I have to ask, because you've been my mentor for however long I've been alive. You've been somebody that I can lean on in sports, in life, in anything. So some tips that you would have for young journalists like myself.
Don't do it. Go get a real job and do this for fun and as a hobby, because it is not for the faint of heart. And go out and make you some real money and cover games as a hobby. That's the best advice I can give anybody looking to get into the business. And I think I've been telling you that since you were about 10 or 11 years old.
I know you have.
But you don't listen to me, so that's all right.
I know. I'm a bit stubborn. I've made my mind up.
But yeah, if you are going to do it and you're dead set on it, I think do as much as you can. I think that's a great thing. And for you, you're so smart and you know the modern technology. You know how to do a podcast. You know how to do it. I don't know how to do all this. You know how to upload it. So I think the different various forms of media and mediums are another avenue. And I think, you still, for me, who grew up with the traditional radio, TV, newspaper, magazines, I think you still have to have that classic media to give some legitimacy and some credibility. And then at the same time, I think some of the new technologies are add-ons, not instead ofs. And so I would just say, do as much as you can. If you get an opportunity, even if it's something you might not be familiar with, do it. And then know how to write. That's, whether it's coming up with scripts for features you're going to do. And I will just tell you right now, and you're a very good writer, there are some young writers out there who've gone through the Grady School out there, who I've read their stuff. It's abysmal. They don't know how to write. And unfortunately, it's a dying skill and a dying art. But there are a lot of us old dinosaurs. That's one of the first things that you're going to look for. You have to know how to paint a picture. So, just keep learning how to write and do it as much stuff as you can. I'll give you a good example. For me, not by any means my gold standard, but I was asked if I wanted to start doing the Georgia women's soccer games for the SEC Plus streaming. Gosh, this must have been 2015 or so. And I had very little knowledge of soccer. I'd never called a soccer. I said, yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to just take it on as a new challenge. And now I've gotten to where it's one of my favorite parts of the job. Tatum Clowney Hodge does the games with me, and she's terrific, and just learning about another sport. And honestly, with that, it's helped me in the other sports that I get to broadcast. You build some more great relationships. So that was a situation where I definitely got out of my comfort zone there, but I sure am glad I did it.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. So I know I know a lot about your position, just being alongside you for a lot of it, and growing up next to you, calling Lady Dawgs games and stuff. But if you could tell us a little bit about your position all throughout Georgia sports and what exactly you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you, a day in the life of Jeff Dantzler is quite entertaining, but it just depends on season. So I called Georgia games and write for Bulldog Illustrated magazine. I've got a daily talk show and do a lot of stuff for GeorgiaDawgs.com through IMG. So this is for young journalists out there. This is a very busy. See, we say November and then late February through the middle of March is what we call crossover season. So now you've got basketball and football together, and you get in February and March, you've got basketball and baseball together. So I'll just give you, now we don't have a magazine to put out now because the Alabama issue is already out. So we won't do another magazine until next week. So usually I'll have that going on too. But for instance, this week, doing a couple of video shoots on Tuesday and Wednesday morning with the Georgia baseball staff, taping Coach Smart's Thursday night Bulldogs Live, and then Thursday calling the Lady Dogs game, Friday doing the SEC Plus broadcast for Georgia versus Mercer men's basketball. Then we'll probably head over to Atlanta Friday night, and Kevin Butler and I are on the air. I did mention him, I think, for my favorite
Oh,
players.
yeah, you did.
So we'll be on the air at noon for that. We'll do the pre and post game. Sunday, Bulldog Brunch from the Hilltop Grill, hopefully some victorious bacon wrapped shrimp. And then Sunday afternoon, we've got women's basketball game again. I honestly am not sure who we're playing Sunday. I'm kind of a day by day at that point. And then later that night, I will tape my daily show that's on the super stations out of Central and Southeast Georgia for Monday. Actually, I can go live this Monday. Yeah, I'm glad I just thought of that. But yeah, usually I have to tape my Monday shows because for the daily Kirby Smart reports, those are done on Mondays at 12:30, and I'm on the air from 12 to 1. So like this show's being recorded on a Monday to let you behind the curtain. So like yesterday, I got done with the brunch and then got home and taped my show that aired this afternoon on super stations, a 9-station group, and then went over and did my shows with Kirby. So I just I've got a lot going on, which is great. I love it. It's not like it's digging ditches, but it's great being busy. That's for sure.
Yes, sir. It always is. I
But
love
you
being
don't want to
busy.
be a Hottentot. You don't want to be a Hottentot.
No, you can't be a Hottentot. Understood. Understood. So I want to go through kind of some of the changes you mentioned a little bit, just from radio to TV, and now with the addition of social media and live streaming and all that stuff. How has your position and how have you seen journalism and sports media really change through the years?
It has been a big change. I just think with the instantaneous nature of things and everybody wanting everything right now, of course, the effect it's had on newspapers, which collectively might have made one of the worst business decisions in history by giving it away for free on the internet. And I know in the sports information game, getting uploads is the most important thing. But I think with the quickness of that, you've seen a decline in quality in a lot of areas. And I see a lot more mistakes and mistakes on sites that are tied to iconic mastheads because of just the race to get something out there first. I think another thing you're seeing, and I believe I might be wrong on this, Tiger Woods was the first to do this, where basically athletes or teams now break their own stories. I mean, it used to be, I remember it was a big deal. You'll go, stop the presses, the old days, like there was a big story in the AJC would have, they would have a copywritten story, Hamilton Culpepper signs with Georgia, something like that. And now you've got athletes, coaches, teams, schools, whatever it may be, releasing their own information. So that's been another big change with it. But there is some neat stuff out there. And again, like these videos I'm doing with the university, with IMG, we've got to deal with Easy Go golf carts, and they're great. So Wednesday, Coach Johnson and I, or Tuesday, Coach Johnson and I don't even know what day it is, but Tuesday, Coach Johnson and I, we're going to ride around in an Easy Go and talk about baseball and talk about Georgia, and that'll be fun. And then Wednesday, I'm going to talk with a couple of the assistants, and those shows will be edited and put together and then put out on social media in the various channels. So again, I think things like that are a great enhancer. And of course, for young people your age who grew up with it, I mean, I know for our athletes, just like every student, it's, again, rightly or wrongly, a very, very important part of most of these people's lives. So if you're going to be in the sports business, you don't necessarily have to go in the deep end, but you got to at least know how to swim in the pool.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It is a crazy wild world of sports, or as some of my professors say. But we'll shift gears again, and we'll do a little speed round. I love doing the speed round. It's the hard pressing questions, maybe softballs that everybody wants to know about Jeff Dantzler. So,
oh boy.
First one, your favorite sports movie?
A tie between The Natural and Hoosiers.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. If you could go pro in any sport, what would it be?
Golf.
Good choice. Your favorite food?
Seafood and fried chicken.
Love it. I know your least favorite, onions.
Onions, no tech.
There you go. And then your favorite quote, maybe a quote that you've lived by or something that you carry throughout your daily life.
There are a lot of them out there, but I think a good one is work whilst it is called today, for the night cometh, whereas in no man can work. And that's by a Scottish philosopher by the name of Sir Thomas Carlyle. And I think that's something that's very important, and it goes very deep. And a lot of that also means cash in. When you've got things you can do, cash in on those opportunities. And that's always been a real favorite of mine. Another one was, and Coach Magill used to have this on his nameplate in his office. It was a quote from the original British Bulldog, Sir Winston Churchill. Said, "The nose of the bulldog is slanted upwards so that it can breathe without letting go."
There you go. I love it. I love it. Two great quotes by two great people. So we'll get out of the speed round. We'll go back to the real questions. You mentioned Tech. We just got off of a big win, going 29 straight, 12-0 in the regular season, carrying on the momentum into the SEC championship this weekend. Do you hate Tech or love Georgia more?
Oh, I love Georgia more. Yeah. Now, that's the thing. I think for a lot of Tech fans, they would rather see Georgia lose than Tech win, which is a big reason why they're the feelings for so many of us. It's just that their fan base, you feel like if somebody said, like when Alabama beat us in the national title game, like, will you take Georgia losing that game if it means Tech just going 6-6? They would say, oh yeah. So that's just part of it with Tech and the bragging. And so many of their fans, it's a come out of the woodwork type thing. And I can remember just being down the last time Tech beat us in 2016, just being down in St. Simon's that summer and seeing a lot more old gold and white, a lot more Tech flags than you've ever seen. And it kind of like termites, then they kind of crawl back under. But when they do well, man, they come out of the woodwork. And I was just thinking, good gosh, if they beat us, especially for Georgia fans in Atlanta, you will see, I guess if a quintupling is 5 times, an octupling, there'll be 8 times more. Everybody will be flying those flags. So, that's like Georgia Tech, Florida State, Clemson, South Carolina. It's just so important to win those in-state battles. I mean, you're in the same state in the same cities with a lot of those people, and it's a lot more fun to have those Georgia flags flying when you're beating the enemy.
Yes, sir. I love it. And you've done it your whole life. It's always the enemy, and it's the greatest.
Well, that was Coach Magill.
Yeah,
that was Coach Magill, and for him, he really kept it together during the darkest of days for Georgia. Back in the 1950s, when we had a terrible decade in football. I mean, it was even worse Tennessee had their worst decade in the 2010s. We kind of out of nowhere won the SEC title in '59. but we had a string of losing seasons and lost 8 straight to Tech from 49 to 56. Again, just the darkest of times for Georgia. And Coach Magill held everything together back then. So to have to go through that losing streak, you talk about hard times, Daddy, as the great American dream Dusty Rhodes would say. But from that, that's why I've always thought, and I heard a commentator say this a few years ago, that it's the losses that unite fans, because you don't have any bandwagoners then. And when you can stick through those hard times, it really makes you enjoy the great days. And I know, just for me, like when we beat Alabama for the national title, I was just thinking about so many dark days or road trips from different years where you're just devastated, and to be on that mountaintop, it's special when you get there, and you better enjoy it. And I do. That is one thing I think for Georgia fans. I think we're enjoying every second of this run that we're on right now, which again, it could end Saturday. And, unfortunately, the way it shakes up this year, I mean, it looks like Georgia would probably has to win to get into the playoff. And I mean, that would be a shame if Alabama won and we were in a spot where we won 45 out of 47 games and didn't make it. But it's just so unique with 3 of the other 4 major conferences having undefeateds as well. But it's been an incredible run, and Kirby has just done such an amazing job, and that authenticity, because he's one of Georgia's favorite sons, being here makes it even more special.
Yes, sir, for sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the current college football landscape, get some current events into this episode. So what's your take on what college football is moving toward next year with the 12-team playoff, that expanded look? And I mean, this year I think is personally one of the craziest years, and the 12-team playoff would work well this year. But there's been differing opinions. So what's your take on it?
I hate it. I think it cheapens a regular season. And the thing that always made college football great was that it was a sport where the regular season meant everything. And, you see it in baseball. You have wild card teams winning the World Series. The 3 teams that won over 100 games last year didn't get past their first round of the playoffs. And it's just the length of the season, too. It is such a grind. Now you're talking about going into late January. More is not always better. And if you go back and look through history, I think the 2 sports that traditionally were in a spot where the best team was the champion at the end was college football, because, again, it was the regular season that set it up for everything, and the NBA, because it's a 4 out of 7. I mean, in college hoops, we've seen it. That 16 seed even now can get hot, and you can be cold one day and you get somebody into foul trouble. But now you're opening the door, you're cheapening the regular season, and you're getting into spots where you could be better off not playing in your conference championship game, just getting in there. So I didn't even like the conference championship games when they were invented, to tell you the truth. Hey, growing up in the early 80s, it was pretty sweet beating Tech. Then you kick back for a month and celebrate and get ready for the Sugar Bowl. So I know a lot of people are doing what would be great for a 12-team playoff now. Because I can tell you, through the years, I can't tell you how many times I've said, man, that 11th best team in the country sure did deserve a shot at the national title.
Yeah.
That's sarcasm there, by the way. And I mean, like the Arizona Diamondbacks got to the World Series with 84 wins. To me, so what you're doing, you've turned it into a tournament sport, just like the expanded playoff is. I'm not a fan of that in baseball. So you're not necessarily getting the best team. You're getting the team that was the hottest at the end of the year. And that was one of the things I always liked about college football. You felt like, for the most part, not every time, because things happen with injuries, but for the most part, you're getting the best team, or one of the very best teams, being the national champion. I mean, I don't think anybody has ever go back and look, since the 1930s, and go back and look through every AP poll. And you might debate, say, well, this year, number 3 team, they really, I think they deserved it. But you've never gone outside of the top 4 or 5 and said, like, oh, yeah, that was the best team. But now you're just in a spot again where it's not necessarily the best team, it's the hottest team. And I'm just, the expansion of that playoff too, it's going to hurt the regular season of college basketball even more. So I just think it's a big negative. And you're talking about maybe playing as many as 17 games now. that is a lot. I wasn't a fan of the 4-team playoff. I thought the BCS was good at getting 1 versus 2. I didn't think they did a good job at putting together good matchups in the other bowl games because they were afraid of a split pole national championship, which every now and then that's fine. You got twice as many fans happy. But my biggest concern when they went to 4, I'm like, all right, I can handle that. But was how soon it was going to expand. And it expanded within 10 years. And not only that, it didn't just expand, it tripled in size. So you're talking about going from playing, and when Georgia won it in 1980, 12 games, and now the fact that now you can play as many as 15, and then you're talking about getting to 17. You're talking about a high percentage increase in the number of games. And again, you are cheapening the regular season. And, I would just hate to get to a point where, let's just say, Georgia versus Tech, Florida versus Florida State. Well, we're already in, depending on this. We're just going to set our starting quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in the NFL. I mean, if you're already in the playoffs, I'll tell you this, if the Chiefs are 13-3 going into week 17 and they've got that top spot clinched, they ain't playing Patrick Mahomes.
Probably not Travis Kelce either. I mean,
is that going to happen with Michigan and Ohio State? That would be a shame. People say it won't, but you don't know. The thing too with it, I just say with the portal and the NIL, there's so much new that has changed. And college football for so many of us has just been this steady rock. I mean, I talk about it every day of my life, and at least think about or talk about Georgia football at least once. And I think the big thing is you could say in the last 3 or 4 years, I think there's been more change in college football and college athletics than there had been maybe in the history of college athletics combined beforehand. Definitely within the last 50 years combined.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think the NIL, the transfer portal is just
and conference expansion. And
conference, yeah.
Oregon and Washington. I mean, if you want to just set it up for football, but you're going to try and tell me like the Oregon and the Washington tennis teams going to play Minnesota and Rutgers. It's so utterly absurd. But this is what happens when the NCAA, they had their head in the sand on everything for 30 years. And, a lot of people could see this coming and they did nothing about it. And now that genie's out of the bottle. But I mean, just the conference expansion that's the other issue to me, where you could say this about the NIL or the playoff, but it's a hard sell to me that it makes sense that Cal and Stanford are going to be in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
That one absolutely blew my mind. I completely will never understand that, and I know the Pac-12 is poorly run, and I mean it's just a shame that you've got, like you said, a tennis team that's going to have to travel to Clemson on a casual Wednesday, and you've got a kid that's going to miss week of school and travel. It's just, I mean, I'm in utter disbelief.
It's absurd.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absurd, and nobody thinks it's a good idea. But this is also, it's a thing. There was, I think, a lack of structure and organization with the NCAA, and the conference has got so much power when it came to the TV deals. I heard Rick Neuheisel was talking a couple of weeks ago, and he made a point. He said, I think, and I'm just quoting him, so I don't know if these figures are accurate, but the college football deals collectively are about 35% of what the NFL's is. And he said he thought college was actually more valuable. I would agree with that, but I do get in the pros, you're in the bigger cities and the major markets. But I think you could say it's at least close to equitable, even if you wanted to say 85, 90%. But the problem is, and he's right on that college football as a whole never negotiated those deals. And there weren't, you've had, like Greg Sankey's a tremendous commissioner for the SEC, but his biggest interest is the SEC, not college football as a whole. And that's what every conference commissioner is going to do. So the fact that there was never a college football commissioner or just say an NCAA, just, I don't want to say dictator or autocrat, but someone who could get there. Hey, listen, we're going to get everybody on the same page. The rules for drug testing, the rules for, how a tournament's going to be run, the rules for NIL, the rules for transfers, the money that's going to schools, to the leagues. It's going to be equal across the board. And that's what was so key with the NFL when Pete Rozelle sat down and convinced, who's the greatest commissioner ever, convinced a lot of really wealthy people to give up control of their individual TV rights and let the NFL do it as a group. And that was the ultimate game changer in sports and sports television. And I don't know if there's any way that we could perhaps get to that point. And you feel like it's so far gone right now, but there's no way that this is sustainable for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So I think at some point all this stuff is going to even out, but just getting things organized and just coming to the table and saying like, all right, I understand there's going to be some change, but can we agree that Washington and Oregon should not be in the same conference with Rutgers and Minnesota? Can we agree that Cal and Stanford should not be in the same conference as Clemson and Florida State? And, that's just one of those, like, can we agree that the sky is blue? And if you can't, well, then you're arguing with an irrational person and you're not going anywhere. But there definitely needs to be. And again, if you want to take football off the table and say, hey, we're going to go to X number of teams and set it up like an NFL schedule, that's fine. But for the other sports, and I was glad to hear Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri's coach, talk out about that, where there's a lot more. Football travel's easy. I mean, you leave on a Friday, you play Saturday, you're back Saturday night, Sunday morning. But
right.
For the others, with basketball, baseball, tennis, I mean, I just remember when West Virginia came in the Big 12, thinking, you're going to get a swimming team from Morgantown to Lubbock, Texas? Come on.
No, it's completely impossible, I think. I mean, it's going to kill these kids' academic lives and social lives even. I mean, and it's going to be, and what's the percentage? Like 1% of college athletes go pro. So, the other 99% that aren't going to go to the next level in sports, who actually have to work academically, they don't even have that life anymore. So it is, like you said, just absurd. But next question I have, going back to this college football season, who's your Heisman winner this week?
Looking at it right now, Penix from Washington has been very good. You talk about guys who've come on. I mean, I think Milroe and Beck deserve to be in the conversation. I think certainly Brock Bowers was, but before he got hurt, I just don't know if he'll have the numbers. Hey, I'd always vote for Brock or Ladd McConkey too. But yeah. I think, I think Beck and Milroe should certainly be considered for it as well. I'm trying. Am I leaving somebody? It's not Bo Nix. I mean,
I hope it's not Bo Nix.
Just look at his splits at Auburn and Oregon, and I've said this too. Like for the playoff, if Oregon wins on Friday night, if Bo Nix got to silently pick 2 teams that he could choose to not make the playoff, take a guess which 2 teams he's picking.
Georgia and Auburn. I mean, and Alabama. I mean,
correct. I mean, you just look. It's not saying he's not a terrific player, but come on here. And the problem with the Heisman, though, it's just turned into a quarterback stats award, which is just very hard for a running back to win it, and it's almost impossible for another guy to win. And we've got so many great players in the SEC on the defensive side. Through the years, we've had a slew of them at Georgia, but I don't think there's just that runaway guy this year. I mean, Penix, they're undefeated. So I would probably lean him right now for Washington. But again, just doing that against the Pac-12 defenses, it's a different animal.
Yeah, I agree. And then next question, we'll close out the current college football questions with this one. But I know it's in the latest issue of Bulldog Illustrated. Who's your top 4 this week?
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
I think Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State.
Yeah, I think that's the common one, and I think it's completely correct. I think.
Then I think with the 1 losses, I think I went Texas, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State.
There you go.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we'll go back to 2 more Georgia questions, and we'll close it up. Can you tell me the most interesting or crazy stat that you recall in Georgia football or any sport really, but just a Georgia stat because you're the encyclopedia?
Just a stat that jumps out there. Well, I think this run that Georgia's on right now, the 29 straight wins, the most ever by an SEC team, beat 2 runs that Alabama had. But to me, winning 45 out of 46 is absolutely amazing in this day and age. So if you really want to go just kind of talking about Georgia, I don't know if this is a stat or anything, but just a fact that the 2 national championship teams in 21 and 22, and those 2 years combined, beat every team that has been in the national championship game in the playoff era. Ohio State, Oregon, LSU, Alabama, Clemson, obviously TCU. I think I just named them all. So I think that's a pretty darn cool and powerful stat right there. So every team going back to 2014 that has played for the national championship, the Bulldogs of 21 and 22 beat each one that's played the national championship game. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's one that'll definitely turn some heads. And I always close out with this question, and I know we're nearing the end, the crunch time. This is when things get for real for this Georgia football team. But what is your predictions moving forward for the 2023 campaign?
I think it's mighty close and mighty tough. I wish we were healthier than we are. I think the Dawgs squeak one out. For all the boxes we've checked, there's one thing we haven't done. Do you know what that is?
Beat Alabama and Atlanta.
Correct. That's the one thing we haven't done. And by the way, when you talk about impressive numbers, I was racking my brain this today. Since Alabama lost to Florida in the 2008 SEC championship game, I think Nick Saban has won 8 straight SEC championship games. That is incredible. See, he beat Florida in 2009, beat us in 12, beat Missouri in 14, beat Florida in 15 and 16, us in 18, Florida in 20, and us in 21. I mean, that is incredible to have won that game 8 times in a row. By the way, this is also 10 straight years that either Georgia or Alabama, at least one, has been in the game. And that's darn hard to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. Will you be in attendance?
Of course.
Okay, just making sure. I know you would. But it's going to be a good one. But thank you so much for joining me and doing this with me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, especially talking sports. It's you're one of the best and know it the best. So thank you very much. And we will see y'all next time.